Today's journey takes us back to Lincoln in 1899, a time when the railroad was young and the streets were dusty and the whole town felt like it was standing on the edge of something really big. But one August morning, everything froze. A young merchant named Frank Landis, well-known, well-liked, and from one of the very most respected families in the region. They found him dead, in the back of his store, a gunshot wound through the chest, broken lamp, signs of a struggle, and absolutely no one, not a soul, heard a thing. The first whispers said murder, the sheriff said suicide, and the Pinkertons, the most respected detective agency in America, said the sheriff was wrong. But the deeper you go into this case, the stranger it gets. That's because the one voice that should have cleared everything up is the one voice that is completely missing from recorded history. This is the story of the murder of Frank Landis, a mystery that has lingered for more than 125 years. Let's start at the beginning. Lincoln in 1899 was different worlds. Quieter, tighter, smaller, horses clopped down F Street, lamps glowed soft and golden in shop windows. Every face you passed on the boardwalk. And right in the middle of this was the True Blue store, a family-run business in the bottom floor of a hall used for meetings, dances, and other community gatherings. It was at 530 G Street today and known as the Amata Building. It's between where Hops and Hogs and Lincoln Florist are today. So back then, it was the kind of place, people stopped for flour, nails, lamp oil, maybe a bit of gossip, The store belonged to the Landis family, well-respected folks. Frank's father, John, had become, a longtime Lincoln businessman. He'd recently stepped back, leaving the shop to in Frank's hands while he moved to Sacramento. Frank's older brother, J.B., served as Placer County's clerk, big jobs, especially back then. By all accounts, the Landises were doing very well. They were connected, trusted, established, and running a store in the 1890s wasn't easy, right? Competition was fierce. Credit, accounts were risky business. And the pressure to keep the family business name strong, well, that's not a weight everyone can carry. So no one knows exactly when things started to unravel for Frank's disappointment from his dad. But business might have been slow, expensive might have been too high, or maybe it was something more personal, something that didn't make the newspapers. What we do know, thanks to the letters later found in the store's safe, is that Frank's father had written him about the business not doing well. The tone of those letters, according to the museum's notes, was disappointed. What was happening behind the counters and ledger books, Frank was carrying it inside him. So neighbors said he seemed worried in the days leading up to the incident, distracted, troubled, and then one night, in August of 1899, everything changed. That evening, Frank walked into the Lincoln Hotel and did something out of character for him. He ordered whiskey. Frank wasn't a drinker. He usually just had lemonade. But that night, witnesses described him as agitated, upset, restless. After his drink, he returned to the True Blue store. Sometime past closing, the lamps went dim, the town settled in for the night, and sometime in those dark hours, Frank Landis was murdered. Just after 5 a.m, Frank's body was found at the back of the store. He was lying on his side, a bullet wound in his chest, a revolver nearby, one chamber fired. His hat was on the floor, crushed as if it was stepped on or grabbed. A lamp laid shattered, in pieces across the boards. Nothing was missing from the store. The safe hadn't been opened. There were no signs of any sort of robbery. So a telegram went out just almost immediately to his father, John, his brother, the county clerk, J.B. Landis, and W.J. Burns, the Placer County coroner. Word spread like lightning, right? By sunrise, the town was buzzing. By breakfast, the whispers had churned sharp. Frank Landis was murdered. So Lincoln wasn't a big place. News traveled fast, and suspicion traveled even faster. People gathered outside the store. Women cried on the boardwalk. Men folded their arms and stared, hard across the street. So there was no reason for, anyone to kill Frank. No enemies, no theft, no warning. The newspaper headline called it foul murder at Lincoln. The town agreed. There was almost no one outside of the sheriff's office who believed Frank Landis died by his own hand. And then the story took one of the strangest turns in our town's history. Let's talk about the sheriff's investigation. At first, nothing contradicted the murder story. But the sheriff's deputies soon suggested the evidence didn't point in that direction and that it pointed to suicide. The sheriff found something at the store safe, which were letters from Frank's father, letters describing disappointment, letters worrying about the business failing, letters that would weigh pretty heavy on any young man trying to live up to his father's expectations. But to the sheriff, the pieces pointed towards suicide, not murder, because of those letters. The sheriff prepared his report, and, once the conclusion reached Frank's father, all hell broke loose, man. His dad just couldn't take it. When the sheriff approached John Landis with the findings that his son likely took his own life, the father exploded. He accused the sheriff of incompetence. He accused him of disrespect. He accused him of attacking the character of his dead son. Remember, in 1899, suicide wasn't just tragic, it was considered shameful. Families avoided even the suggestion of it, right? Communities whispered behind closed curtains about it. Churches sometimes refused burial services. So to a father like John Landis, it was unthinkable. So he took matters into his own hands, right? He hired the most famous detectives in America. If the sheriff wouldn't find the killer, then John Landis would hire somebody who would. Here's a quick off-ramp to explain who the Pinkerton Detective Agency is for those who don't already know. They didn't mess around, right? In the late 1800s, the Pinkerton Detective Agency wasn't just another group of investigators. They were the elite detectives of the United States, right? So think of them as the combination of the FBI, the Secret Service, and the Navy SEALs. And before any of those existed, right? And so they had better training than most lawmen, better equipment, a national network of agents, no political boss, to answer to, and a reputation for finding the truth, whether people liked it or not. Their motto was literally, "We never sleep." When a family hired the Pinkertons, it meant one thing. They were serious, and they weren't going to accept local incompetence, excuses, or cover-ups. For the sheriff, having the Pinkertons show up was like having your boss's boss's boss walking into the office asking why your work looks so freaking sloppy. The Pinkertons' most famous case was the capture of Jesse James' gang, right, which was one of the most legendary manhunts in American history. So the Pinkertons hunted Jesse James and his gang across multiple states, and they infiltrated towns, questioned witnesses, tracked financial trails, and often went undercover. No local sheriff could even come close. This case made the agency feared by criminals nationwide. When the Pinkertons rolled into Lincoln, they came in with the confidence of national agency and the swagger of men who believed nobody could out-investigate them. Maybe they couldn't. They spread out across the store, the alley, the hotel, and even upstairs hall, taking notes on everything from broken glass to boot prints. And after several days of work, the Pinkertons announced their findings. Not in a careful whisper, not in a private conversation, but in a way that guaranteed headlines. The Placer Herald was more than eager to print their conclusions, and they were dramatic. Here's what the Pinkertons believed happened in the store that night, right? So the Pinkertons argued that Frank Landis did not kill himself. They said the scene screamed of foul play, and that they backed it with 5 major claims, right? And here, let me tell you what those 5 claims were. 1, there was a sign of a struggle, right? They pointed to Frank's crushed hat found flattened on the floor, a shattered oil lamp broken in the way that they said wasn't accidental, scuff marks and near the back wall. And to them, these were the fingerprints of a fight. So the second reason, pistols were involved, right? Not one, multiple. This was the boldest claim that they made, right? The Pinkerton agent said that the wound didn't match Frank's revolver, right? And it was a different caliber of bullet. The angle, right? That's a really important one. The angle of the bullet's path was awkward and if not impossible for someone committing suicide, right? So if you take a look at this, right? And so the bullet hole went through the top of the chest here and came out through the bottom of the back, right? And so, if you were trying to commit suicide, I don't think it would really be, too convenient to do such a thing, right? I mean, you would think if you were going to kill yourself, you would just shoot yourself in the head. So, anyways, there were also lack of powder burns, right? This is something that was just basic to us today, which means that the shot came from a distance, and he didn't use it. There was no gunshot residue on his hands. So to the Pinkertons, that suggested a second gun, and that was the real murder weapon. So number 3, right? The broken lamp was a key witness. They described the lamp as the most important clue in the entire store. They claimed the lamp didn't fall. It was knocked or thrown. The debris pattern showed force, not accident. They even called it the telltale lamp. Number 4, witnesses who said Frank was upset couldn't be trusted or relied upon. The Pinkerton argued that the sheriff relied on biased witnesses, hearsay, people who may not have even been influenced, or they maybe were influenced by local officials. So they insisted there was no solid proof that Frank was suicidal. Number 5, the sheriff mishandled or ignored important evidence in the case. And this is where the Pinkertons got confrontational. They accused the sheriff's office of not being trained detectives, not securing the scene, rushing the investigation, overlooking footprints, and ignoring physical clues. The implication was clear. The sheriff had made serious mistakes, or something even worse potentially. The family was in a position to make a lot of powerful enemies, quite frankly. So number 6, motive was unclear, but murder was still the only explanation. The Pinkertons admitted that they did not have a named suspect. They hinted at, confrontation, a late night intruder, or most likely a financial dispute on a loan, right, due to the pressures from his family. But their final conclusion was unshakable. Frank Landis did not take his own life. Someone else was in the store with him, right? The sheriff's conclusion is an error. That they'll stand by that to the end. And the Placer Herald printed every word of it. So the sheriff's office got involved early. Investigators looked over the scene, talked to the witnesses, examined the gun, and almost immediately, faster than anyone expected, they declared the death suicide. Lincoln exploded, right? Frank's father refused to accept it. His brother was enraged. Friends were shocked. Neighbors whispered about the corruption, incompetence, or something even worse. And in response, Frank's father did something dramatic, right? He hired the Pinkertons, who arrived and examined the scene, interviewed their own witnesses, and publicly accused the sheriff of being wrong, ignoring evidence, and possibly covering up a murder. Newspapers printed every word of the Pinkertons' accusations, and yet strangely the sheriff's response, the official rebuttal, never appeared in the main local paper. The implication at the time was that the sheriff's report was just a list of grievances about the Pinkertons. So instead of the sheriff's report was, since they wouldn't print it there, it was printed in a small newspaper called the Placer County Republican Argus, which existed for just about 1 year and then vanished completely. And today the issues from that period are missing, gone from the library, gone from the archives, gone from the museum, gone from the state library, gone from microfiche. I mean, the whole thing is just gone. And this brings us to the heart of the case, right? After the sheriff closed the case, the town of Lincoln found itself split in two. Some people wanted to believe that the official version, because believing otherwise meant living with the idea that a murderer walked around, around the streets with him. Others believed that Frank was killed. They pointed to the physical evidence, the wound, the silence, the missing report, the crushed hat, the Pinkertons' accusations. And then there was Frank's father, John Landis, never accepted the suicide ruling. Not for a second, right? He fought with the authorities. He argued with the sheriff. He brought in detectives, and after the funeral was conducted by the Knights of Pythias, he moved back to Lincoln to take over the store himself. The loss absolutely crushed him. The land around the True Blue store seemed to go quiet. Folks stopped talking about the case. People looked down when the subject came up. And eventually, like so many unresolved tragedies, it faded from the papers. But not from the memory, right? So at the time, you'd hear both versions. One group say Frank took his own life, that he was overwhelmed, exhausted, and burdened by, expectations that the sheriff's office, got it right. The other group, they're not buying it, not with the wound, not with the missing report, not with the Pinkertons, and not with the way the whole thing quietly disappeared. And maybe that's why the story survived, right? Because the truth wasn't clear, because the official story didn't ring true, because the one person who could have explained everything, the sheriff, left behind absolutely nothing. And when history removes only, one voice from a story, you can't help but wonder why that is. So here's what I still scratch my head about after looking at the case, right? Why did Frank shoot himself in the chest instead of the head where it ends quick, right? Would he rather bleed to death and have it take up to 24 hours to die? Or, or is this something people, definitely would have known back then, because gun violence was common. It makes no sense to choose each shot to the chest. It just plain and simple doesn't. So here's what we can say with confidence, right? This is the truth. Frank Landis was 26 years old when he was shot. He was found dead in his store on August of 1899. The sheriff's office declared it to be a suicide. The Pinkers declared it to be a murder. The coroner was W.J. Burns. Letters show the pressure from Frank's father. Witnesses saw him upset that night. The wound was unusual. The sheriff's report is missing. The Placer Republican Argus issues are missing. The town never reached consensus. The gun is only a prop, right? It's not real. It's used to show the position, used to make the shot, and for dramatic effect. So, the legend, right? Frank was murdered by someone he or his family knew, right? There's no evidence of that. It's just a legend. The sheriff covered it up to preserve order. Again, that's a legend. The family name was protected by eliminating the scandal. The coroner's report was intentionally suppressed. The sheriff's report was intentionally lost. The town chose silence over truth, right? Whether any of that is true, we'll probably never know, right? But the missing pieces, those are the ones that matter, because in history, missing pieces tend to be missing for a reason. So Frank Landis lived his entire life right here in our community. He worked in a store on the street we still walk today. He laughed with people whose grandchildren are still here today. And his death, mysterious, tragic, controversial, still echoes through Lincoln like a story waiting for an ending. We may never know what truly happened in that store on that silent August night, but we can remember Frank the same way our town did, as a young man who deserved better than, answers than everybody got. And maybe by bringing his story back to light after 125 years, we're giving him something the sheriff never did: a fair look, an honest telling, and the respect of not letting his story disappear. His death left a mark on Lincoln, big enough that the story echoes today, from the museum archives to the local historians to anyone who digs up the true blues past. And that's why we tell these stories, right? Not just because they're strange, but because they're ours. Thanks for watching another Strange Stories of Lincoln. Keep your eye out for the next episode. If you like this one, share it on YouTube with someone who cares about our community or simply likes storytelling. So as always, I'm Mike Crossfield, a local business owner trying to build a stronger Lincoln together. So if you're having thoughts of self-harm or suicide, help is available to you. Call 988, text 988, or have a live chat with the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's free, it's confidential. You'll reach someone who is trained and to listen to you and support you, okay? So if you're having those sort of issues, please take care of yourself. Have a good night.